Revenge with Karen.
I knew the exact moment the company was doomed. It wasn't when the stock dipped, and it wasn't when the old man, Big Jim, finally decided his liver had fought enough battles and retired to a hospice bed in Boca. No, it was the moment I saw his son, Chadwick, step out of a leased Porsche in the employee lot, wearing Italian loafers with no socks in a facility that processes industrial solvents and pressurized steam. You know the type. 32 years old, teeth whitened to a shade that violates nature, and an MBA from a school that probably accepts crayon drawings as a thesis. He looked like he was generated by an AI prompted with arrogant finance bro who thinks manual labor is a quaint hobby. I watched him from my office window on the second floor. My office is essentially a glass cage overlooking the production floor of Site 14, a sprawling, sweating beast of a factory in central Florida where humidity hangs in the air like a wet wool blanket and the ambient temperature is Satan's armpit. I'm Marla. I'm the Director of Safety and Compliance. For 18 years, I've been the reason people go home with all 10 fingers attached. I'm the buzzkill, the fun police, the woman who walks into a room and makes grown men hide their uncertified extension cords. And Chadwick was walking across the designated forklift lane while texting. I sighed, took a sip of lukewarm black coffee that tasted like battery acid and despair, and tapped on the glass. He didn't look up. A forklift driver named Hector, a man with tattoos older than Chadwick and a patience fuse shorter than a gnat's lifespan, had to slam on his brakes, the load of chemical drums wobbling dangerously. Chadwick didn't even flinch. He just kept walking, radiating that specific kind of invincibility that only comes from never having been punched in the mouth or crushed by a hydraulic press. Listen, before I tell you how I burned this kingdom of stupidity to the ground, do me a favor. If you enjoy watching entitled Nepo babies get absolutely wrecked by federal regulations, hit subscribe and maybe give this a like. It fuels my cold, dead heart and helps the team keep the lights on. Safer than a lockout/tagout procedure, I promise. Okay, back to the carnage. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on the production floor. Usually, Big Jim would stand on a crate, shout a few profanities about quotas, ask about everyone's kids by name, and we'd get back to work. Chadwick had other ideas. He had a stage built, a literal stage, rented overnight. He had a sound system that cost more than the quarterly PPE budget. He walked up there with a wireless headset microphone like he was about to drop a TED talk on synergizing the paradigm shift. The workers, sweaty, tired, covered in grime and smelling of solvent, stared at him with dead eyes. Team, Chadwick began, his voice booming with unearned confidence. I've been looking at the numbers, and frankly, we're living in the past. My father built a great foundation. Foundations are meant to be built upon, not lived in. He paused for applause. A wrench clattered to the floor somewhere in the back. That was the only sound. We need to get lean, he continued, pacing the stage. We need to disrupt the industrial chemical space. I've been looking at our overhead. We have too much redundancy, too many checks, too many balances. We're moving slow because we're afraid to run. My stomach dropped. In my line of work, running means slipping on an oil slick and cracking your skull open. Redundancy is the reason we haven't had a fatality since 2004. He pointed a manicured finger at the crowd. Starting today, we implement Project Velocity. We are cutting the fat. If a process doesn't directly generate revenue, it's on the chopping block. We aren't just a factory anymore. We're a brand. I felt the eyes of the shift supervisors drift toward me. They knew exactly what non-revenue generating meant in corporate speak. It meant maintenance. It meant training. It meant me. After the speech, which included the phrase aggressive optimization at least 6 times, I cornered him near the break room. The air in there smelled like microwave tilapia and dashed hopes, a familiar perfume for anyone in manufacturing. Mr. Chadwick, I said, keeping my voice flat. I don't do fake nice. I'm Marla. Safety and compliance. He looked me up and down, his eyes glazing over as soon as he saw my steel-toed boots and high-visibility vest. I wasn't a spreadsheet. I was an obstacle. Ah, yes. Marla, he said, checking his Apple Watch. I saw your department's budget. Impressive numbers. You spend more on preventative training than we do on marketing. That's because marketing doesn't stop chlorine gas from melting people's lungs, sir, I said. We have a mandatory safety audit of the pressure valves on line 3 due next week. The downtime is scheduled for Tuesday. Chadwick laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound, like someone stepping on dry leaves. Downtime? No, no, we're in a sprint, Marla. Cancel the downtime. Run the machines. We have orders to fill and investors to impress. Those valves are rated for 5,000 hours, I said, my voice dropping an octave. They're at 5,200. If one blows, it's not an oopsie, it's a crater. He stepped closer, invading my personal space with the smell of expensive cologne and incompetence. You safety types are all the same. You deal in what ifs, I deal in what is. And what is happening is that we are running line 3 at 110% capacity starting tomorrow. Don't be a dinosaur, Marla. Evolve or go extinct. He patted my shoulder, patted it like I was a golden retriever, and walked away, typing on his phone again. I stood there in the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming their low-frequency buzz of anxiety. I watched him go. He thought he was the predator in this jungle because he signed the checks. He didn't realize that in a place like this, the machinery is the apex predator, and I'm the zookeeper keeping it fed and happy. If he wanted to cancel the audit, fine. I walked back to my office, unlocked my filing cabinet, and pulled out a fresh, crisp refusal of work order based on imminent danger form. Evolve or go extinct, I muttered to myself, uncapping my favorite red pen. Careful what you wish for, kid. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't just documenting a violation. I was starting a war, and unlike Chadwick, I wasn't bringing a PowerPoint presentation to a gunfight. I was bringing the state of Florida statutes. But first, I had to let him hang himself. And oh, was he eager to find the rope. The thing about decay in an industrial setting is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow, grinding erosion. It starts with a skipped inspection log, then a flickering warning light covered with electrical tape, then a puddle of hydraulic fluid that gets stepped over instead of mopped up. Under Chadwick's project velocity, the erosion wasn't slow. It was a landslide. 2 weeks into his reign, atmosphere at Site 14 had shifted from disciplined industrial hum to frantic sweatshop panic. The veteran guys, men like Hector and Big Sal, who could diagnose a failing bearing just by the vibration in the floor, were silent. They kept their heads down. They knew talking back meant getting optimized out the door. I, however, have a contract and a distinct lack of survival instinct when it comes to idiots. I started my mornings earlier now, around 5:30 a.m., walking the catwalks before the first shift fully engaged. The facility felt sick. The air scrubbers were humming a pitch too high, straining against filters that should have been changed 10 days ago. On Tuesday, I found the temp workers. I was down near the mixing vats, giant stainless steel cauldrons capable of dissolving a Honda Civic, when I saw 3 kids who looked like they should be bagging groceries, not handling Class B corrosives, were wearing standard streetwear sneakers. No steel toes, no chemical aprons. One of them had his safety goggles propped up on his forehead like sunglasses while he poured a reactant into a hopper. I moved so fast I think I broke the sound barrier. "Stop," I barked, my voice cutting through the mechanical din. The kid jumped, nearly dropping the canister. "Who authorized you to be on this deck?" I demanded, snatching the canister from him. "Where is your PPE? Where's your badge?" The kid looked terrified. The new manager, Mr. Chad's assistant. He said we just needed to keep the hopper full, said the gear slowed us down. My blood didn't boil, it froze. Cold rage is useful. Hot rage makes you sloppy. "Get off the deck," I said, calm and lethal. "Go to the break room. Do not touch anything. Do not breathe deeply." I marched straight to my office and typed memo #402. Subject, unauthorized personnel/critical PPE violation. I detailed the time, the location, the specific OSHA codes violated 1910.132 for those keeping score, and the potential fines, which amounted to roughly the cost of Chadwick's Porsche. I sent it with a high importance tag. 10 minutes later, I got a reply. Not from Chadwick, but from his new director of operations, frat brother named Tyler who wore vests and probably thought hard labor was a CrossFit workout. Reply, "Marla, let's not be alarmist, we're agile staffing. The boys are just filling gaps. Let's focus on solutions, not problems. THX, solutions, right." That afternoon, the absurdity peaked. Chadwick announced a mixer, a rebranding celebration. They cleared out a section of the warehouse floor, Zone D, which is specifically designated for flammable storage, set up high-top tables with white tablecloths. They brought in caterers. They brought in a DJ. I stood on the mezzanine, watching waiters circulate with trays of champagne flutes among stacks of pallets labeled highly flammable, oxidizer. It was a scene from a fever dream. You had investors in three-piece suits clinking glasses next to a forklift that was leaking transmission fluid. You had a drone buzzing overhead, filming content for social media, flying dangerously close to the overhead sprinkler heads. I pulled out my phone. I didn't take a selfie. I took photos of the champagne bar, blocking the emergency fire exit. I took a video of the DJ plugging his massive soundboard into a surge protector that was daisy-chained to a manufacturing outlet labeled Dedicated Circuit Do Not Use. Enjoying the party, Marla. I turned to see Chadwick holding a glass of bubbly, his face flushed with triumph. Blocking a fire exit, Chadwick, I said, pointing to the bar. If a fire starts in the oxidizing zone, those investors have exactly 40 seconds to evacuate before the oxygen is sucked out of the room. Currently, they'd have to climb over a shrimp cocktail tower to survive. Chadwick rolled his eyes, a gesture he was perfecting. You are such a downer. Look at them. They love the energy. We're showing them that manufacturing is sexy. Safety violations aren't sexy. Chadwick, they're actionable, I replied. I sent you a memo about the temp workers. Did you read it? Tyler handled it, he dismissed, waving his hand. Look, Marla, I know you're used to the old way, the slow way, but you need to get on board. I'm hearing chatter that you're becoming a bottleneck. A bottleneck, I repeated. Yeah, people are afraid to work fast because they think you're going to write them up. It's bad for morale. He leaned in, his breath smelling of expensive yeast. Consider this a verbal warning. Get with the program, or we might have to rethink your fit here. He walked away to high-five an investor. I stood there for a moment, watching the drone buzz like an angry hornet, a verbal warning to me, the woman who wrote the damn safety manual. I walked back to my office. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened my safe. Inside was a black binder. I labeled it the Chadwick Files. I printed out the email from Tyler. I printed the time-stamped photos of the blocked exits. I printed the roster of untrained temp workers. Rethink my fit, I whispered to the empty room. I wasn't just collecting paper anymore. I was building a coffin, and I was going to make sure every nail was perfectly, legally compliant. The Monday morning leadership meeting was usually held in the glass-walled conference room nicknamed the Fishbowl. Under Big Jim, these meetings were boring but necessary. Under Chadwick were performance art. The table was populated by the new guard, Tyler Ops, a twitchy HR director named Jessica, who looked like she was constantly on the verge of tears, and a few holdovers from the old regime who looked like hostages in a bank robbery. I walked in with a single folder. No laptop, no coffee, just the Valve report. The atmosphere was manic. Chadwick was scribbling on a whiteboard, drawing arrows that pointed to dollar signs. Q3 projections are looking massive, team, Chadwick announced, slapping the board. If we sustain this output, we're looking at a 20% bump in valuation before the IPO roadshow next month. He turned to me, his smile dropping a few millimeters. Marla, good of you to join us. I assume you have something brief. We're tight on time. It's about the Line 3 pressure valves, I said, remaining standing. I placed the folder on the table and slid it toward him. Are now at 5,400 hours. That's 400 hours past the manufacturer's critical failure rating. The sensors are showing microvibrations in the housing. We need to shut down Line 3 immediately. Today, right now. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the AC and Tyler tapping a pen on the mahogany table. Chadwick didn't even open the folder. He looked at it like it was a dead rat I'd placed on his lunch tray. Shut down, repeated, letting the words hang there. Shut down our highest performing line 2 days before the biggest investor walkthrough in company history. The walkthrough is irrelevant if the line explodes, I said, keeping my voice steady. The physics don't care about your IPO, Chadwick. If that valve fails, it releases superheated steam at 600 psi. It will cut a person in half. Literally. Have attached the gruesome photos from a similar incident in the state in '98 for reference. Chadwick picked up the folder. He weighed it in his hand. You know what I think, Marla, he said, a smirk playing on his lips. I think you're addicted to drama. I think you create these little crises so you can feel important. Because without them, what are you? Just a cost center. I am the reason you have a license to operate, I said, my grip on the chair back tightening until my knuckles turned white. Chadwick stood up. He walked over to the corner of the room where a heavy-duty industrial shredder sat, a new addition meant for security. We're done with the fear-mongering, he said. He held up my report. The report with the vibration logs. The report with the urgent signatures from the maintenance chief. This, he said, is a waste of budget. And frankly, so is your role. He fed the folder into the shredder. Sound was aggressive, a grinding, tearing screech as the metal teeth chewed through the paper. He didn't break eye contact with me the entire time. He smiled as the data, the warnings, and the safety of his employees turned into confetti in a clear plastic bin. "Get out," Chadwick said softly. "You're done, Marla. Pack your things. We're pivoting to a distributed safety model, which means we don't need a director of no." The room was frozen. Tyler looked down at his shoes. Jessica from HR looked like she was about to vomit. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I didn't beg. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity, pure, crystalline clarity. It was the feeling of a heavy burden being lifted off my shoulders and placed into the hands of gravity. "Understood," I said. My voice was so calm it frightened me. I turned around and walked to the door. "Leave your badge at the front desk." Chadwick shouted after me, looking for one last reaction. I didn't turn back. I walked out of the fishbowl, past the rows of cubicles, and down the hall to my office. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed the framed picture of my dog, and I grabbed the Chadwick Files black binder from the safe. I logged into my computer one last time. I navigated to the state compliance portal. I didn't delete anything. That would be illegal. Instead, I went to the authorized site safety officer field, the field that legally allows the plant to run hazardous operations. I clicked Resign Commission. A warning box popped up. Warning: removal of the primary safety officer without a certified replacement will result in immediate suspension of operating license Class 4. Do you wish to proceed? I looked at the yes button. I thought about the shredded report. I thought about the temp kids with no goggles. I thought about the steam valve vibrating like a bomb waiting for trigger. I clicked yes. Then I walked out to my car, the Florida sun blinding and hot, and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Hello?" A gruff voice answered on the second ring. "Iron Mike," I said, lighting a metaphorical cigarette in my mind. "It's Marla. Tell me, how's your schedule looking for Friday?" Drive from the industrial park to my condo in Sarasota is usually a 40-minute slog through traffic that consists mostly of tourists who don't know how turn signals work and locals in lifted trucks driving like they're fleeing a hurricane. Today, the drive felt like floating. I had the windows down. The humidity whipped my hair around, smelling of salt water and exhaust. I wasn't panicked about my mortgage. I wasn't worried about my 401k. I had savings. What I had was the serene, almost religious focus of a woman who knows exactly where the bodies are buried because she was the one forced to dig the graves. My phone on the passenger seat buzzed. It was a text from Jessica in HR. "Marla, I'm so sorry, he's manic. He wants me to draft a severance package but wants you to sign an NDA first. Please don't do anything rash." I laughed. "Rash? Honey, I'm not rash. I'm compliance. I'm procedure. I'm the fine print that kills you." I ignored the text and focused on the call connected to my Bluetooth. "Marla," the voice on the other end repeated. "I haven't heard from you since the conference in Orlando. You calling to yell at me about the updated confined space regulations again?" "No, Mike," I said, merging onto I-75. "I'm calling to ask if you've checked the filings for Site 14 today." Mike, Iron Mike to those who fear him, which is everyone in the industrial sector of Florida, paused. Mike is the lead inspector for the State Division of Industrial Safety. He's a man who wears a hard hat to church. He has eyes that can spot a missing lock washer from 50 yards away. We've fought for years. I fight to keep my company open. He fights to shut us down. It's a game of respect. He knows I run a tight ship. "No," Mike said slowly, the tone of his voice shifting. "Why? Did you file an update?" "I filed a resignation of commission," I said. "As of 11:42 a.m., Site 14 has no licensed Class 4 safety officer on record." There was a heavy silence on the line. The sound of Mike typing on a keyboard clicked in the background. "I see it," he murmured. "Jesus, Marla, you were the only thing keeping that rusty bucket legal. Did you retire?" "I was optimized," I said. "Phased out." "Apparently, safety is a non-revenue generating obstruction." "Who's the replacement?" Mike asked. "The law says they have 24 hours to appoint a certified interim or operations must cease." "There's no replacement, Mike. Just an MBA named Chadwick who thinks OSHA is a suggestion and a shredder where my valve reports used to be." "A shredder?" Mike's voice dropped. It became very, very quiet. "Did you say he shredded a report?" Line 3. "Pressure valves. 5,400 hours. Microfractures in the housing. I recommended immediate shutdown. He recommended I clear out my desk. Is line 3 running at 110% capacity? They're sprinting for an investor show. I heard a sound I hadn't heard in years. The sound of Iron Mike cracking his knuckles. Marla, he said, are you officially off the clock? I am a private citizen enjoying the afternoon breeze. Good. Then you won't mind if I schedule a random comprehensive site audit. I think I'm free. Well, look at that. My calendar just cleared up for Friday morning. Friday is perfect, I said, watching a pelican dive into the bay as I crossed the bridge. They're having a big walkthrough. Investors, press, drones, Mike scoffed. Inside a Class B facility? That's a violation of airspace statutes regarding volatile storage. Add it to the list, Mike. It's a long list. You gonna be around? He asked. I might take a drive by, I said. Ideally, I'd like to collect my personal effects from the parking lot. You know, just to stay out of the way. You're a scary woman, Marla. I'm just compliant, Mike. Just compliant. I hung up and pulled into my driveway. I walked inside my cool, quiet condo. I poured myself a glass of wine, a nice, crisp Sauvignon Blanc. I sat on my patio and opened my laptop. I didn't go to Netflix. I went to the state's public records database. I wanted to see if Chadwick had realized his mistake yet. I refreshed the page. Site 14 status, active. Safety officer of record, vacant alert, non-compliant. Grace period expires in 18 hours. He didn't know. He actually didn't know. He thought firing me was like firing a marketing assistant. He didn't realize that in the eyes of the state, I wasn't an employee. I was a structural component of the license. He had removed the brakes from a train and was currently shoveling coal into the engine, screaming about velocity. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like victory. But the best part, I wasn't even the one pulling the trigger. I just handed the gun to the law. Most people think corporate safety is about hard hats and yellow tape. It's not. It's about paper. It's about the cover-your-ass doctrine of American liability law. See, 5 years ago, after a minor chemical leak that nearly cost the company $1 million, Big Jim, the old CEO, got spooked. He asked me to bulletproof the company. He wanted us so compliant that God himself couldn't sue us. So, I built the fortress of bureaucracy. I rewrote the operating charter. I integrated the safety officer's signature into every single procurement order, maintenance schedule, and shift roster. I made it so that the factory literally could not buy toilet paper without a safety review. But the masterstroke was the key personnel clause in our state operating license. To get a discount on our hazardous waste insurance, I agreed to a stipulation. The site safety director must be a named individual with specific certifications, which I have, and their termination triggers an automatic license probation. Basically, I turned myself into a load-bearing wall. Can't remodel a load-bearing wall with a sledgehammer unless you want the roof to kiss the floor. Chadwick didn't read the charter. He didn't read the license. He probably thought compliance was a flavor of Gatorade. Wednesday passed. I spent the day at my kitchen table, organizing the Chadwick files. I had timestamps. I had emails. I had the text messages from terrified shift supervisors. Text from Hector, forklift lead. M. They forced the override on line 3. It's shaking, boss. The floor feels like it's vibrating. We're scared. My reply, stay safe, Hector. Document everything. Do not sign any waivers. I wasn't just building a case for the inspector. I was building a defense for the workers. When this ship went down, I wasn't going to let the crew drown with the captain. Meanwhile, social media was painting a very different picture. I pulled up Chadwick's LinkedIn. He was posting hourly. Post 1, disrupting the industry requires breaking a few eggs. Out with the old, in with the bold. #project velocity #new era post 2, a video of him standing in front of line 3. The noise in the background was deafening, a high-pitched screech that audio compression couldn't hide. He was shouting over it, listen to the sound of money. I zoomed in on the video. In the background, I could see a pressure gauge. The needle was buried in the red. You idiot, I whispered, taking a screenshot. That's not money. That's cavitation. Thursday arrived, the day before the big show. I received an email on my personal account. It was an automated notification from the State Department of Environmental Protection. Subject, notice of automatic audit triggered. The clock had run out. The 24-hour grace period for replacing the safety officer had expired. The system had flagged Site 14 as unsupervised. Years of the bureaucracy were turning. They grind slow, but they grind exceedingly fine. I also got a call from Tyler, the ops director. He sounded breathless. Marla, hey, look, we have a situation. I don't work there, Tyler, I said, watching a cooking show on TV. I know. But look, we can't find the password for the lockout system. We need to reset a breaker, and the system is asking for safety director auth. That's because it requires a safety director. Tyler, yeah, well, Chadwick is freaking out. Can you just give me your password? We can pay you a consulting fee. Like for the day, I paused. This was it. The moment where a lesser person might cave, might take the cash, might help them out for old time's sake. Tyler, I said, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. Giving you my password would be a federal crime. It would be falsifying safety records. I could go to jail. You could go to jail. But the line is down. Need to reset it. Then you should hire a certified safety director to assess the fault and reset it legally. We don't have time. The investors are coming tomorrow at 10. Then I guess you better hope the investors like darkness, I said. Goodbye, Tyler. I blocked the number. I looked at the clock. 4:00 p.m. on Thursday. The trap was set. The bait was taken. The prey was currently trying to hotwire the trap because he didn't understand how it worked. I went to my closet and pulled out my favorite suit. Navy blue, sharp lines, and my polished heels. Tomorrow wasn't a workday. It was a funeral for an ego, and I wanted to look my best. Friday morning dawned with that oppressive Florida brightness, the kind of sun that bleaches colors and makes shadows look like black holes. I arrived at the industrial park at 9:30 a.m. I didn't park in the lot. I parked across the street at the diner, Al's Greasy Spoon, which offered a perfect panoramic view of Site 14 main entrance. The place looked like a circus. Chadwick had installed a literal red carpet leading into the manufacturing bay. There were valets, for a chemical plant. A mobile espresso bar was set up near the security gate, staffed by hipsters making latte art for men who were about to tour a facility that smelled like sulfur and bad decisions. Ordered coffee and toast and watched through the window. At 9:45 a.m., I saw the first sign of trouble. A side door burst open, and two guys stumbled out supporting a third. It was the temp kid, the one I'd yelled at earlier in the week. He was clutching his arm. Even from across the street, I could see the angry red welts of a chemical burn. They didn't call an ambulance. I saw Tyler run out, waving his arms. He pointed toward a sedan, shoved the kid into the back of the car, and sped off. Hiding the body, I murmured. Classic. They weren't taking him to the hospital. They were taking him to an urgent care clinic off the books to avoid a reportable incident. If I was still there, I would have shut down the line immediately for an investigation. Chadwick, meanwhile, was visible through the glass front doors of the lobby. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my car, adjusting his tie, practicing his smile. Looked like a king. At 9:50 a.m., the investors arrived. A convoy of black town cars. Men in expensive suits and women in power blazers stepped out. They looked soft. They looked rich. They looked like they had no idea they were walking into a microwave oven set to explode. Chadwick greeted them with open arms. I saw him pointing at the factory, making grand gestures. See the future, he was saying. See the efficiency. Then, at 9:58 a.m., real guests arrived. It wasn't a town car. It was a fleet of 3 white state government SUVs with the distinct devastating blandness of bureaucracy. They didn't use the valet. They pulled right up to the curb, blocking the red carpet. The doors opened. First came the junior inspectors, clipboards, cameras, measuring devices. Then, stepping out of the lead vehicle, was Iron Mike. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing his faded blue field jacket, steel-toed boots, a hard hat that had seen more disasters than FEMA. He looked like a boulder that had decided to go for a walk. He didn't look at the espresso bar. He didn't look at the valets. He looked at the building with the weary disgust of a man who smells gas. I paid my tab at the diner. Keep the change, I told the waitress. I'm going to watch a demolition. I walked across the street. I didn't go in. I stood on the public sidewalk, right at the edge of the property line, put on my sunglasses. I saw the receptionist try to stop Mike. I saw Mike simply flash his badge, a gold shield that carries the weight of state law. The receptionist melted away. Chadwick was in the lobby, shaking hands with a silver-haired investor. He froze when he saw Mike. I couldn't hear the words through the glass, but I knew the script. Chadwick, who are you? You can't be here. Mike, I'm the state of Florida, and you're in my house. The investors looked confused. Drone pilot landed his drone. The espresso machine hissed loudly in the silence. I checked my watch. 10:02 a.m. It was time for the walkthrough. but not the one Chadwick planned. The beautiful thing about state inspectors is that they have zero sense of theater. They are immune to charm. They are allergic to bullshit. I moved closer to the open lobby doors. I wasn't technically trespassing. I was standing in the designated smokers area, which, ironically, offered a great acoustic vantage point. Chadwick was currently trying to block Mike's path to the production floor. It was like watching a poodle try to stop a tank. "This is a private event," Chadwick hissed, his smile straining at the edges. "We have VIPs here. You can't just barge in." "Do you know who my father is?" Mike stopped. He adjusted his hard hat. "Son, I don't care who your father is. I care who your safety officer is. Is Marla Vance on site?" Chadwick's face twitched. "Marla is, no longer with the organization. We are transitioning to a lean compliance model." "Lean," Mike repeated. He turned to his team. "He says they're lean. Mark that down." The junior inspectors scribbled furiously. "Without a licensed safety officer, you are operating in violation of Statute 442.1, Mike said, his voice loud enough for the investors to hear. "Since I received a credible report of imminent danger regarding a pressure vessel, this is now an emergency intervention." "That's a lie," Chadwick shouted. "Who reported it? Was it her? Was it Marla? She's a disgruntled ex-employee." "It was the vibration sensors," Mike lied smoothly. "We monitor them remotely. And right now, line 3 is singing a song that ends in a boom." He pushed past Chadwick. The investors, sensing drama and perhaps danger, followed. Were like moths to a flame, except the flame was a potential industrial accident. I slipped in behind the group. No one noticed me. I was just another person in a suit. We walked onto the production floor. The noise was horrific. Usually the factory hums. Today it screamed. Line 3 was shaking, visibly shaking. The floor grating beneath our feet buzzed. "Look at this." Chadwick yelled over the noise, trying to regain control. "Maximum output. Are breaking records." Mike walked straight to the pressure gauge on the main valve. He tapped it. The needle was pinned. He turned to the nearest worker. It was Hector. Hector looked terrified. "Shut it down," Mike ordered. "I can't," Hector yelled back. "The overrides are locked. Management has the keys." Mike turned to Chadwick. "Give me the keys to the override." Chadwick crossed his arms. "Absolutely not. That stops the line. That costs us $10,000 a minute. Are demonstrating resilience." Mike looked at Chadwick. Then he looked at the investors. "Gentlemen, ladies," Mike bellowed, "I am declaring this site an immediate hazard zone. If you value your skin, you will evacuate now." The investors didn't need to be told twice. The silver-haired man looked at Chadwick, looked at the shaking pipe, and walked briskly toward the exit. The others followed. "No, wait," Chadwick screamed, chasing them. "It's safe. It's innovation." Then, sound cut through the air. A high-pitched whistle. The relief valve on line 3. It wasn't blowing yet, but it was leaking. A jet of white steam shot out, slicing the air just feet above Chadwick's head. He ducked, covering his expensive haircut. Mike didn't flinch. He pulled a heavy chain and a red padlock from his bag. "Chadwick," Mike shouted, "you have lost operational control. I am seizing the facility. You can't do that." Chadwick shrieked from the floor. "Watch me." Mike walked over to the main power cutoff for line 3, the big red lever that shuts down the whole sector. He didn't just pull it. He slammed it down with the force of God. The machinery groaned. The screaming whine dropped in pitch, lower and lower, until it became a dying shudder. The lights flickered and went to emergency backups. Silence crashed into the room. Heavy, ringing silence. Chadwick stood up, his suit dusted with grime from the floor. He looked around. The line was dead. Investors were gone. The only thing left was the hissing of cooling steam and the sound of Mike snapping the padlock shut on the lever. "Tag it," Mike said to his team. "Lock out everything. Gates, breakers, valves. Nobody enters, nobody leaves." I stepped out from behind a pillar. "Nice padlock, Mike," I said. "Master Lock Pro Series? Good choice." Chadwick spun around. He saw me. His eyes went wide. "You," he whispered. "You did this." "No, Chadwick," I said, pointing to the steam valve that was still dripping superheated water. "Physics did this. I just made sure someone was here to watch." There's a specific sound a padlock makes when it snaps shut on a commercial gate. It's a metallic clunk that sounds like a prison sentence. We were outside now. The factory was cleared. The workers were gathered in the parking lot, looking confused but strangely relieved. Hector caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod. Knew he wasn't going to die today. That was enough. Chadwick was pacing in front of the main gate, his phone glued to his ear. "Daddy, you have to call the governor." He was screaming. "They chained the gate. They kicked out the investors. It's a raid." "No, I didn't." No, Daddy, listen. He lowered the phone. He looked pale. Big Jim had apparently hung up. Mike was filling out a bright orange sticker on the gate. Stop work order. Order of the State Department of Industrial Safety. This is illegal, Chadwick spat, walking up to Mike. I'll sue you. I'll sue the state. I'll have your badge. Mike finished writing the date. He stuck the sticker over the seam of the gate. He turned slowly to Chadwick. Son, Mike said, his voice tired. I've been doing this job since before you were born. I've shut down mines. I've shut down refineries. I've shut down places with lawyers who cost more than this entire building. My father plays golf with the governor. Chadwick blustered. Mike chuckled. We trained the governor. Who do you think writes the safety briefs he reads? Us. The law isn't a suggestion, and political favors don't stop steam explosions. He handed Chadwick a clipboard, a thick citation stack. What is this? Chadwick asked. That is your initial assessment, Mike said. Operation without a license. 42 counts of willful negligence. 15 counts of PPE violation, tampering with safety equipment. And my personal favorite, reckless endangerment of a public assembly. How? How much? Chadwick stammered. The fines start at $300,000, Mike said, per day, until the violations are corrected, which, judging by the state of that valve, will take about 6 months of overhaul. Chadwick dropped the clipboard. The papers scattered on the asphalt. 6 months, he whispered. The IPO is next month. Not anymore, I said, stepping forward. Chadwick looked at me with pure venom. You happy, Marla? You destroyed the company. You destroyed 200 jobs. Are you proud? I didn't destroy anything, I said, picking up the clipboard and dusting it off. I saved 200 lives. And the jobs, they'll be back. But you won't. You're fired, he sneered. You're double fired. You'll never work in this industry again. Chadwick, I said, leaning in close. I'm a compliance officer in Florida with a spotless record who just whistle blew on a major hazard. I'll have 5 job offers by Monday. You're the guy who got padlocked on livestream. I pointed to the drone operator who was still standing nearby, packing up his gear. He shrugged. I was live streaming to the investor's Zoom call, bro. Sorry. Chadwick turned white. He looked at the gate. He looked at the lock. He looked at his Tesla, got in his car and peeled out of the lot, nearly hitting a traffic cone. Mike walked over to me. He took a cigar out of his pocket, unlit, of course. Hell of a morning, Marla, he said. Hell of a morning, Mike. You know, he said, looking at the silent factory. We're hiring consultants at the state level. Good benefits, less stress. No MBA, I'll think about it, I said. But first, I'm going to go to the beach. Mike nodded. He tapped the padlock one last time to make sure it was secure. It's tight. Nobody's getting in there without a plasma torch. I walked to my car. I looked back at the factory. It was ugly. It was quiet. But it wasn't exploding. I got in, turned on the AC, and blasted some Tom Petty. I didn't run away. I drove away. At exactly the speed limit. The fallout was swift, brutal, and thoroughly entertaining to read about in the business section of the local paper. Chadwick's project velocity hit a wall at roughly Mach 2. The viral clip of the steam leak, captured by the drone, made the rounds on LinkedIn and Reddit. The caption innovation explosion became a meme. The IPO was canceled within 48 hours. Investors don't like putting money into a building that has been legally condemned by the state. Big Jim, bless his heart, apparently had a miraculous recovery from his hospice bed, or at least, age gave him a second wind. He called an emergency board meeting on Sunday. Chadwick was removed as CEO effective immediately to pursue other interests. I assume other interests means trying not to get sued by every shareholder in the Tri-County area. On Monday morning, I was walking along Siesta Key Beach. The sand was cool, the water was turquoise, and my phone was off. When I finally turned it on around noon, I had 14 voicemails. 13 were from recruiters. 1 was from Big Jim. I listened to it on speaker while drinking an iced tea. Marla, it's Jim. Look, the kid's an idiot. I should have known. He thinks real life is a case study. We're in a bad spot, Marla. Mike won't let us cut the chain unless we have a certified safety director sign off on a remediation plan. He explicitly said, I want Marla's signature. Call me, name your price. Just help us fix this. I smiled. Didn't call him back immediately. I waited 2 days. Negotiation 101. The longer the silence, the higher the price. When I finally met with them, it wasn't as an employee. I walked in as an independent consultant. My rate was triple my old salary. My contract stipulated that I reported directly to the board, not the CEO. And my first condition, full amnesty and back pay for the entire workforce during the shutdown. Big Jim grumbled, chewed his cigar, but he signed. He had to. The chain on the gate wasn't coming off without me. The factory reopened 3 weeks later. It was quiet. It was boring. The innovation banners were in the dumpster. The espresso bar was gone. The temp kids were gone, replaced by trained union apprentices. I walked the floor on the first day back. The hum was right. The vibration in the floor was gone. We'd replaced the valves on line 3. Hector drove past on his forklift, stopped, looked at me, and tapped his hard hat, a salute. I walked up to the mezzanine, to the spot where Chadwick had stood with his champagne. I looked out over the floor, the sparks from the welders, the steam from the vents, the orderly movement of people doing dangerous jobs safely. I wasn't interested in revenge. Revenge is messy. Revenge is emotional. I was interested in safety. I was interested in the fact that everyone down there was going to go home to their families tonight with all their fingers and lungs intact. But I won't lie. As I watched the new compliance first banner go up on the wall, I took a sip of my terrible, lukewarm breakroom coffee and thought to myself, sometimes the law writes better endings than I ever could. And sometimes you just have to hand the idiot the scissors and wait for him to run. Thanks for listening. If you've ever had a boss who thought safety was optional, drop a comment. And remember, document everything. The paper trail is your parachute.
Well, that was a ride. Um, People never stop surprising me. Appreciate you sticking around to the end.